1 second, just make sure we put one. Perfect. All right. Welcome. I'll call the meeting to order. It's now 7:05 on January 23rd, 2023, for the meeting of the Town of Milton School Building Committee. I'll just do a quick roll call of who's with us tonight. And if you could just say present or here, appreciate it. Carrie Hurley.
Here.
Thank you. Mike Zulis.
Here.
Glenn Hoffman. All right, Selena Miranda.
I'm taking notes. Hi. Present.
You're on mute, Tim.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm present.
Yeah, like I said, I think Scott and Betty will be on the way, so just keep an eye on them. Wait.
Sean, we're not hearing you.
Can you hear me now? Better? All right. When you're doing this, Ada, is that yes or no? Yes, thank you. All right, so and I'll speak up a little bit too. I apologize. It's been a long day. I think I'm mumbling a bit too. So for second thing on our agenda is citizen speak. So we allocate the first 15 minutes of our meetings for public comment. We ask to keep it to 3 minutes long. And, with that, I'll open it up to that. So if anybody from the public wants to speak, just use the raise hand function. I can call in. Scott. All right, not seeing anyone. All right, so we'll start off the review and approval of the meeting minutes. So the meeting minutes that we have listed there, I have the ones from Glenn and Kerry. I think, and I apologize, I didn't get a chance to forward those over. Tim, I think you and Aqua are the only other ones that have outstanding ones.
I think you're correct about that, Sean. I apologize. I realized that as I was logging on today that I didn't hit send on those, and we spoke about it, and I did edit them, and they're ready to go to you. I'll get them over to you.
Okay. So, for those minutes, what I'll do is just table it till our next meeting, but I'll send the ones that I have from Glenn and Carrie along tonight after this meeting. So I apologize about that. So next item on our agenda is old business. And essentially, I want to talk about a few subjects that are on there. So the first one is the Fontbonne Convent. As many of you are aware, we've been working with the town since November to work on a plan for the purchase of Fontbonne, the convent, and essentially rehabilitate it into an early education center. So, over the holidays, myself, Town Administrator Nick Milano, Mike Zulis, and a number of others worked towards developing an RFP that Fontbonne did respond to. And then we essentially entered into negotiations for purchase of the property. We were made aware last Friday that Fontbonne has rejected our offer and further has withdrawn their offer for us to purchase the property. With this too, Mike, I'll open it up to you to provide some other context or comment.
Sure. So as you said, we issued an RFP. They made an offer. We came back with a counter offer, increased the amount over what they had asked for, but they had asked for use of the building for offices and classrooms for up to 6 years, and perpetual use of the fields. When we went back and increased our monetary offer above what they had asked for, we said, well, we can't we can't allow we can't allow you to use the building while we're renovating it, but until we're renovating it, which is about 9 months to a year, you could use it. We also said that it doesn't really work for us to not be able to use the fields for playground. And they get back and they said they're not interested. And our understanding is that from the broker is that they're going to take it off the market. So
Thanks, Mike. So, yeah, our intention tonight was, we were going into February's town meeting, which is coming up in about 3 weeks. We went through the Warren Committee last week, got a recommendation from them to purchase this. So we're kind of going forward with that. And that was kind of one of our points tonight, to basically expand on it a little bit further, to talk about a couple of things. But just in light of the news that we got on Friday, I'll, for the other members of the committee and the guests we have, from the school committee, I'll open it up to anybody that has any questions, any comments or anything like that. Mike and I can do our best to field, any of those questions for you. Maybe just use the raise hand function. I can call on you. None. All right. So the second thing on the agenda that we're looking at as far as old business was an update on the services. Our last meeting, we voted for DRA to do essentially conceptual work at Fontbonne. So obviously with this right now, there's no need to further engage DRA presently for that, because the Fontbonne project is not moving forward at this point. So scratch that from the agenda. The third thing on the agenda is something that we talked about previously, which is an update of the survey plans at Gow Road. I sent all those out previously. I know we talked about it at a previous meeting. The drawings that we got from them were probably about 90% there. We got the composite plans back from them that have the wetlands and the roads, everything basically laid on top of each other. So it gave us a little more context. One of the things I'd like to do before we kind of come to like a final vote of which option we definitely want to go with is, for lack of a better word, work the 8 options down to fewer, and then get in front of the Conservation Commission so they can weigh in on anything. And for them, it's only 2 options, for the road options that we're looking at. Whether the proposals that we're showing are in violation of any conservation easements or anything like that along that wetland boundary. So with that, I'll open up to any comments or questions from anybody.
With the money that we will now not be spending on the efforts on Fontbonne, is that going to bolster our ability to do some conceptual layouts of the different kind of layouts with different roads and setbacks based on the surveys that we've gotten back?
At this point, Tim, no. I mean, what my goal would be is for us to using our judgment for the layouts that we're looking at, figure out what parcel is the best, and then once we develop that, present that over to DRA. Because I do want to engage them again for conceptual studies like we did originally at Gow Road. But at this point right now, we don't have a contract for them, so I don't want to hold that up any further. And most of that money too, just to follow on too, was being funded by the school committee, not really by us. So we would need them to basically review another contract and take a vote on that too. Yeah, Ada.
Yeah, Sean, I just want to be sure that we circle back with DRA to find out if we have incurred any fees on their end. I know we've had some calls with Carl Franceschi, and I don't know how much his team has gotten on board with this, but to know if we do owe them anything for this, the beginning of the work on the concepts at Fontbonne. And if so, we want to be sure to take care of that, and then whatever we have left, we can see where we stand in terms of using the funds for something else.
Okay. Yeah, and I was supposed to reach out to Carl today, but I was a little hectic today, so I'll do that tomorrow to touch base with him.
Thank you.
Mhm. All right, folks, so we get 8 options in front of us and no one's talking. Scott?
Thanks, Sean. I like the 25-foot buffer over the 50-foot buffer. Just it gives a little bit better piece of property to work with the shape of it and the grades.
Yep.
And then as far as size goes, I think, either option 3 or 4 are probably the best. I think 3 is probably the best, and then I would put 4 behind that.
Yep.
And that gives a good buffer on both sides.
Give it a minute. I assume, I think people are looking right now, so just take a look.
I guess, Sean, what would be helpful for me, I don't know if you could go very sort of quickly summarize the options before, but I'm trying to go back and forth and it's just, I don't have them straight in my head.
Yeah, I'll pull up the road options. I think that's the first one that we look at, and then after that, we'll bring up the others. So let me just share the screen. Just let me know when you can see it. So this is the option, that Scott basically prefers here, which is the alignment of the road. And basically what it does is it moves it, as far away from Gow Road, the existing alignment, which comes down the road this way. Brooks Field is over here. The conservation land is at the bottom of the screen. So what it does is it pushes the road the furthest into that, land that's basically used for active recreation. The other one, which is the other option on this road that, again, I want to talk with the Conservation Commission about, is a similar alignment there. It pulls it back a little. So what I've done, just for, to make it easier as we look at this, the alignment of the 2 overlaid. So the one that Scott prefers is basically in blue. And then as you can see, it's basically just another 50 feet over is the other road. And then basically those create it. Obviously the blue road here, as Scott mentioned, allows more land of the active recreation parcel, which is this one here on the side of Gow Road, and utilize less of the conservation land that's on the other side of Gow Road. My only concern with it too is, as we're doing that, the no disturbance buffer, and I apologize, it gets double lined when you get in close. The alignment of the road kind of comes close to that. And with, any problems that we might have, or again, even further, construction of this later on, for maybe a year, 2 years out, if that wetland boundary changes at that time too, that would change the alignment of the road. So that's my only caution on going that far over also. So I'll pull out a little just so people can see it.
But it
Uh,
does not extend into, I know the lines are blurry, but it's fine. Like we can see on the native file that it does not extend into that no disturbance area.
Yeah, currently it does not, based on the boundaries and layouts. And apologize, Scott, you get a hand up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if we're concerned about that, we could always, I mean, we're not stuck with these two options. We can do anything in between too. So we could always do a 30-foot or a 40-foot or a 35-foot buffer as well.
Yeah, the problem where that comes into is that we have to do a boundary survey based on these road alignments that then gets entered into the legal documents for the land swap. So, well, part of it, I understand the need or the want to have, greater amount of land and stuff like that. My guess is once we draw these boundaries up based on these road alignments, that's what gets entered into the article for the warrant when we do the land swap. So that we're kind of locked into those boundaries at that point. Hey, Carrie?
I was just gonna kind of make a similar comment to Scott, which was, could we kind of split the difference between the two? Get us a little bit off of the no disturbance line and then give us as much room on the other side, because I do agree with Scott, and on this, I'd like to see us take as much land as we possibly can on the activity side.
And
I
I
think we answered it.
Yeah, and I'm just providing commentary on what I'm seeing. So, you know what I mean? If everybody feels the 25-foot one is better, that's also fine with me. And yeah, as we go into the design, basically what it means is the boundary that we would have for town use for the school would get reduced because we'd be building part of the road through there. Yeah. Mike?
I agree with using as little of the conservation land as possible and moving it as far as we can from home Inc. as possible. That seems like that's the blue that Scott and Carrie have favored.
Okay, so with that, then, the options that you were looking at, Scott, for the setbacks from home Inc. Do you remember what those were? Was it 50 or 100 feet?
Let's see, they were parcel 3 and parcel 4. I don't know if it said on them which setback, what the setback was.
Yeah. Parcel 3, right? Parcel 4. The other two options that we got on there. Well, sorry about that. So with that road alignment that we were just talking about, the 25-foot road, this is basically the alignment here. Option 1, which is, as we talked about, a 0 buffer with home Inc. What that would lead to is about a 6.8 acre site, which is currently what the conservation land is right now. So it'd be using, 1.3 would remain conservation, another 2.2 down here would remain conservation, using a lot less in this area and a lot more of the parks. The second option is this 50-foot buffer zone that exists here. Again, with that 25-foot one, the about 4 acres would remain as conservation land out of the 6.8. So we'd basically be only using 2.8. I do my math right. There's about 6.4 acres total for parcel 2. Parcel 3 would be a 100-foot buffer zone across there, roughly about 5.8 acres below the 6. that we're showing. And then parcel 4, which would be the 150-foot boundary, would be the smallest parcel at 5.29.
So Sean, were all of those that you just went through, parcels 1 through 4, were those all with 25-foot buffers on the Pine Tree Brook side? Okay, and what was the total acreage for option 3?
Option 3 was total acreage 5.83.
5.8, okay, thank you.
And Scott, you have your hand up. Thanks.
Yes, I think the acreage we were looking for was over 5, correct?
Over, I believe it was over 6.
We were trying to get to over 6.
Correct.
Okay. So maybe it's option 2.
It's
and
not
3
just the
instead of
acreage, it's the
3 and
kind of,
4.
it's the angles you're digging into the site. It's gonna start impeding on the flexibility of a design, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So just be careful of how we slice that up.
Yeah, you're talking the topology of the existing site, Glenn.
Yeah, it just seemed like I'd be wary of, I think you want to maximize your acreage. I know you need setbacks, but I'd be wary of making the setbacks too big.
Okay. Yeah, I mean that's partially with me, and just for some context, for everybody, as we mentioned already, we haven't been able to get DRA on contract to kind of look at the 8 options, come up with 8 different school options. But the previous layout that DRA did along Gow Road, that was on a 6.8 acre site. So I think everyone remembers, what that building looked like, what the site looked like. So, going down to 6 acres or even a full acre below at 5.8, I tend to agree with Glenn that it might squeeze a little bit too. So we just want to keep that in mind. And again, we're not voting on this tonight. I just, want to hear from everybody, get, kind of whittle these options down a bit, and then meet with the Conservation Commission to come up with some thought. So, and Tim, you have your hand raised.
Finally, I rudely jumped in before without my hand raised, not noticing everybody raising their hands, and I'm sorry about that. Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify one thing. So option 1 shows the 0 setback. That is the 0 additional setback on top of the minimum setback buffer zone that is required, right? So there is that, we're not implying that there would be no setback. We're implying that there's no additional setback.
Correct. So the options that we're doing, or the boundaries that we're just showing, were conservation setbacks that we're doing. So the boundary between our parcel and Home Inc., what we'll be talking about is a conservation buffer there. So when we say a 0 buffer, there'd be a 0 conservation buffer, but there would still be a 50-foot zoning buffer built into that.
Right. I still agree with what Scott was saying. That kind of my comfort level lies more with some level of an additional buffer, a conservation buffer, as you're describing it here. So I'm kind of in that camp of the parcel 2, parcel 3 zone. I also recall that we were trying to have something greater than 6 acres.
That's where, when I'm looking at it for, the parcel 2 is 6.4 acres, and then 5.83 would be parcel 3. So yeah, I think we're getting into the
Could you put parcel 2 up again, Sean? Would you mind?
parcel 1, parcel 2. So parcel 2, again, is, a 50-foot conservation buffer between, our site and Home Inc. And then additionally, on top of this, is a 50-foot, basically the same distance back here, but the zoning buffer for that. So actually, if you
I think
take,
this is where I like.
yeah, if you take into account that zoning buffer, basically, if we took an additional 50 feet off here, you would be at option 3. This here is actually showing, what a 50-foot conservation buffer would look like and a 50-foot zoning buffer. So at, a working amount of 5.83 acres. So just some reference, Ada, sorry.
So Sean, if we were to take a look at the options 5 through 8 that are 50 feet, is it 50 or 25 feet away from the, no, 50 feet?
50 feet, yep.
Right. Are any of them greater than 6 acres?
I'll pull them up, we'll take a look. This is Debbie, perfect timing. So this one, parcel 8, that's under 5 acres, so I don't think we'd be looking at that one. So that's a
John, it's parcel 5 is 6.2 acres and parcel 6 is 5.98. All the other ones are under 6.
okay. So when we look, on those ones there, Ada, the parcel 5, which is basically a 0 boundary buffer with Home Inc., is 6.42 acres. And then parcel 6, which is the next one, which is that 50-foot buffer there, it is 5.98 acres, basically a 6-acre site. Right. Scott?
I was just thinking parcel 2 might be the best bet. And if, that gets us 6.4 acres. And if we're struggling to get that approved, maybe we don't have to go all the way back to parcel 3. Maybe we just scale up back to the point where we can at least get 6 acres.
Yeah, again, the tough thing that we're doing,
Well, it's not drawn, right?
It's the boundary portion of it, of getting, the exact coordinates, the northern and eastern to each one.
If we're stuck with that, then, we've got to, then I would say that 25-foot and parcel 2.
Okay. And Mike, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, so, but just to clarify, so if we did parcel 2, there would be an additional 50-foot conservation, 50-foot buffer, zoning buffer on top of that, which would take us to 5.8. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So
Right.
basically, I could draw it in and fake it, but basically, if you go between option 2, which is a 50-foot buffer, and then you go to option 3, sorry, parcel 1, option 3, that's the 150-foot buffer.
Yep.
So that working amount of land that we'd have would be that 5.83 acres.
Right. And the buffer would be 100 foot, right?
Yeah, essentially 50 feet of conservation and 50 foot of zoning for a
Yep.
total of 100 feet.
Okay.
So, and then one of the things I'll just throw out there too, I just want to look at this. If we looked at that same kind of thought process between parcel 6 2, which is the same as parcel 3, for that same boundary over here, just a different road alignment. We're at 5.98, and then that working amount. Sorry, I'm just trying to. Zoom thing gets a little in the way of trying to navigate. And then open parcel 7, apologies. So it would, what I'm hearing is, we're working in between parcels 2 and 3 and parcels 6 and 7. And the only difference between those kind of those options there, I mean, it is we're zoning in, from what I can hear, between parcels 2 and parcel 6, which are both the 50-foot offset that we're looking at. For the zoning buffer, another 50 feet for the concept, 50 feet for the zoning buffer, 50 feet for the conservation buffer, for a total of 100 feet. And that acreage would be between 6.4 for the 25-foot roadway and 5.98 and a 50-foot roadway. So, okay. Yes, Scott.
I'm sorry, I just never took my hand down.
Apologies. Right, Selena.
Yeah, just, I'm sorry, just between the different parcels, it just gets all confusing for me, but I'm trying to think of sort of if I have a matrix for decision making. It sounds like what we would like to do is have as much of a buffer zone in terms of zoning and conservation, but also preserve the acreage, right? So that we would be able to do what we want to do. And if that's the case, would then the parcel 6 be the one? If I use that sort of matrix for decision making in my mind, it seems like that would be the top choice.
Yeah, we're getting from, so the difference is, I'll do my best to kind of summarize. So we've got 8 options. The first 4 options that are there are based on that 25-foot road alignment. So that's kind of why we dove into those first. The second 4 or 5 through 8 are based on the 50-foot alignment. And then each one of those has setbacks associated with them, which is basically how those 4 options came up to. But it seems, just based on the discussion that we're doing, is everyone's comfortable with the 50-foot setback for conservation, which is basically parcel 2 and parcel 6. And then the only difference between the two would be the road alignments that we probably want to talk with Conservation Commission about. So I apologize. It does get a little difficult to follow at times, as we're running just between parcel and parcel there. That was basically the layout of them. All right, Scott.
One thing I'm just thinking, if between those two, I would probably make the argument that if we couldn't get the 25-foot buffer on the road, that I wouldn't want to give up a 50-foot buffer on the other side for Home Inc. I'd rather decrease that so we can maintain the same acreage. Maybe in your conversations with other town committees, that there's some offset there, but we need to maintain the acreage somehow.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's going to come out, when we meet with Conservation Commission. I think if they, if the 25-foot road alignment that we were showing earlier works and there's really no commentary from them, I think, we all agree that's the best way to go. To move the road as far away from conservation land as possible and minimize how much impact we would have on it. And then after that, just from discussion that we're hearing tonight, aiming for a 6-acre parcel, workable land is, I think, what our goals are right now. Any other commentary or questions in regards to parcels or the road alignment? Seeing none. All right. So let me find my agenda after that. All right. The last thing essentially on old business was, the update. Again, this agenda was written before the news that we got on Friday. But was essentially an update on the special town meeting for February. So as I mentioned, the article with Fonbon was approved by the warrant committee, or recommended by the warrant committee last week at a meeting that they had. The warrant is going to the printer tonight. I think they've sent it at 5 o'clock today. Most likely what will happen is, I believe the article will get referred back now that it's not there. Mike, do you want to touch a little on select board's view on that?
Well, I mean, select board view remains to be seen, but
Yep.
if we don't
Yeah,
have,
sorry.
if we don't have a property that's being offered to purchase, then I would imagine that the select board would ask that it be referred back for further study, basically pull the article. And there was some discussion about indicating in the warrant that went to press today, an indication from the town administrator that the property is no longer being offered for sale to the town, so that the town meeting members are aware that there may not be much, if any, discussion of Article 3.
Any comments or questions from members? All right, see none. So on to new business. We put some articles in as placeholders right now for May's town meeting. Aqua, I apologize, I didn't see your hand up.
It's okay. Just trying to see if we can, maybe you said this at the meeting, apologize to committee members. I running some errands and couldn't log in from where I was. Do we know why why Fonbon is no more offered for sale to the town? Is there anything we can do to salvage that? Is that totally off the table?
Yeah, so essentially what happened was the town had developed an RFP, as many members are aware. We had that out in November. Fonbon was the only one to respond back to it. Their response to the RFP had certain, for lack of better word, stipulations or requests. What they were was that they wanted to utilize classrooms within the facility still, even though there are no classrooms that exist in there, but they wanted to use it for that. They wanted office spaces, and both of them essentially for a 3-year term with 3 one-year extensions on them, totaling 6 years. Additionally, they wanted perpetual use of the field or the green space that's behind there going up towards Labouré. So, as we entered negotiations with them, we met with their realtor and, basically made them aware of, the amount of renovation we would need to do to the space. It would impact, the occupancy. You couldn't have people in there while we're, gutting out all the utilities. We just made them aware of that. The other part too was the field location potentially was going to be playgrounds or play structures for kindergartners. So, we just wanted to make them aware. So, for us, it was, with that, we're kind of hoping it would lead to further negotiations, that if it was a non-starter for them, that there might be other options that we could talk to. The email that I got that I forwarded to everybody essentially, had them list, say that they, refused our offer that was there, and further they rescinded their offer to sell. So, we are still working with them. We're trying, you know what I mean? But, we can't force them. So, we are still trying, but, it's difficult if they've really come to a final decision.
Thank you.
All right. So essentially for May, as I mentioned, we put in some articles right now. The first one that I put in was essentially for funding. When I drafted the article and submitted it in, it was there as a placeholder, with the assumption that Fontbonne was a go, that, we're in the process of purchasing it. And, at the time come May, we would need engineering and architectural services to build it out for what we were doing. The other part too is it's also to supplement, funding for this committee, which, currently we're at a very, very low amount. So, well, I think our ask in May will definitely get reduced. I know we've discussed before of, funding reasons for additional funding, traffic studies, water analysis, stormwater runoff and stuff like that. So I just want to make the members aware that, we did enter some articles in there for that also. So just in regards to funding, I'll open up for any questions or discussions. Seeing none. So next thing on the agenda, the other articles that are there for town meeting are essentially articles for the land swap for Gal Road. So, as I mentioned, even while we're moving forward with Fontbonne, we're always going in essentially a parallel path for, the event that Fontbonne didn't happen or fell through, which is essentially what happened. So for right now, my goal is to still proceed to go to May for the land swap and, present our article, our layouts that we're just reviewing for BSC to the Conservation Commission and, basically, keep working towards what we need to do essentially for May. So on that kind of general topic, I'll open it up to anybody if anybody has any commentary or questions. Yep, Selena.
Yeah, in sort of the costs that we've thought about that we might incur, have we taken into account whatever additional negotiation or work that we need to do with, oh gosh, I just blanked on the name of the group, the Home Inc. Just in terms of what we will need to do there, because I mean, I do understand sort of we need all of our studies, et cetera, but it feels like that work in terms of negotiation or whatever we need to do is not done.
So just if I understand correctly, are you asking if we are hiring additional staff to kind of work the negotiation process with us?
Yeah, just as we sort of think about just what it'll take, right, to do the project, I just think that sort of dealing with sort of the town, the conservation, et cetera, all of that needs to happen. But I feel like at least the way as strongly as Home Inc. was coming against the project, that seems like another huge hurdle to get through. And I'm not sure we've spent some time sort of thinking of what that'll take to reduce the resistance from that level. And perhaps maybe we'll turn to the community, and it's really up to the community to rally and do the advocacy on that level. But I just want us to, I guess, continue to think about that and wondered if any of in our thinking, if we've considered that.
Yeah, so on a similar note to that, as we're proceeding with Fontbonne a few weeks ago, Mike Zulis and myself actually went over to Home Inc. to meet with them to give them a heads up and awareness that, we were proceeding with Fontbonne. That was our preferred option. We're 100% behind it, which we were working towards. But we wanted to make them aware that there was also, we were still proceeding with a parallel path just in case this happened. So we're kind of doing that just so they wouldn't hear rumors or speculation that, we're trying to do both. I think our intent was to, if Fontbonne fully went through, that there were multiple steps for that to happen. So the first was past town meeting in February. The second was a debt exclusion vote in April for the cost to purchase Fontbonne. And if any of those failed, we essentially needed a fallback plan for May. So what we went there to do is basically walk them through of like similar to the discussion we're having tonight. Even if Fontbonne was still on the table, we still needed to go down this parallel path as that backup plan. So, we have recently engaged them, and we'll probably keep engaging them, throughout the process of this entire endeavor. Yep, Tim.
Yeah, I'm not speaking for Selena, but I did really like her comment, and maybe I think her comment was specifically to your funding requests for this committee and to your continued efforts to engage with Home Inc. Maybe we need to plan on requesting funding for a consultant to assist us in staying organized as we continue to engage Home Inc.
I'm fine with that. For part of that, just the time between now and May, we obviously couldn't hire anybody for that. We'd have to wait till the funding comes through in May. But yeah, following on after that, yeah, I have, we just have to, one, at some point as that request comes around, figure out what the dollar value of that would be, and then, work that in as part of our overall budget or funding request. Right, Betty?
I know we had allocated some funding for DRA, and now that the Fontbonne option is probably off the table, did we incur expenses with DRA, or is there a way to recap some of that money that we would have spent on doing the evaluation of the Fontbonne building?
Yeah, so the DRA proposal that they put in, essentially for the feasibility study for Fontbonne was $18,500. The majority of which the school committee was funding. Whatever money was left over in our account, essentially from our final invoice with BSC Engineering for the plans that we were looking at earlier. Whatever that leftover amount was, we were going to be, for lack of a better word, throwing in the pot to offset some of the costs for the school committee. I have to have a call with Carl Franceschi at DRA tomorrow to basically find out what costs have been incurred up to date. So long-winded answer. So the answer is, we have to talk to Carl to figure out what that cost was. Depending on what that cost was, it'll tell us how much is left over. And then based on how much is left over, we'll kind of see, if we can reallocate that. Aqua.
I'm piggybacking on Selena and Tim's question. Maybe what we want to do is not just focus on Fontbonne, but if we can afford it, bring in stakeholder management support. So we're looking at it holistically. Is it possible that there are other opponents to the project that our radar is not capturing? Or is it also possible to help those who are supporting the cause to increase their volume so that they can counterbalance others who are against the project? We may need to look beyond just Fontbonne, Home Inc., and think of proper stakeholder management support.
Yeah, part of it might take, and I'll open it up for any commentary too, is, for us, political advocacy and, promoting, different options and stuff like that. It might kind of go beyond what our charge is, for, the money we get allocated, it's, for building a school. I don't know if there'll be other parties and stuff like that will be doing that. For me, I would draw on others that have kind of served in these roles before to even know if that's even allowable as us, the committee, to kind of even do. Yeah, Selena.
Yeah, just from experience. So I just went through a really difficult process in Jamaica Plain for a project at a church. And it's sort of the consultants that I ended up hiring really was just about organizing a process by which the community would enter into dialogue and really listen to one another, as opposed to, sort of all these this tendencies that happen in contentious moments, which is just the assumptions that run amok. And so how do you then begin to create the space for folks to really listen to one another? And I think through that process, I was able to get sort of the group that was so on-type, but not, they were against it because they weren't listening. It wasn't really that we were in different camps. It was really just, we weren't taking the time to listen to one another. And we came around and now the project's moving forward. But it really required a third party facilitator to come in and be able to create that space for those conversations to happen. It's mostly that, because I think this committee as the messenger will not necessarily work. So just in terms of, again, it's that third party sort of facilitation that could be very beneficial. I don't think it's really so much political advocacy. I think it's more about creating space so people listen to each other.
Okay. Yeah, and if you could, Selena, from the past project that you were doing, if you could, help, determine, costs for stuff like that, so that way we can have an idea, how to budget for it and stuff like that. I'm fully open for it. It sounds, great. We've tried a couple avenues of public meetings. We've actually had independent moderators do some of it previously and stuff like that. But yeah, anything to share more of the knowledge that this committee's building up, I'm for. All right, so in regards to the land swap, that's the agenda item we're still on, to see if there's any other discussions, commentary, or questions that anybody may have. All right. Seeing none. Next thing on the agenda is basically our next meeting. Again, when this agenda was built, it was built on the fact that we're moving forward with Fontbonne. Our intent in talking with Carl Franceschi at DRA, he was going to attend a meeting next week to kind of give us an update on their feasibility study and everything there. So knowing we're not going to have Carl next week, I don't think we need to have a meeting next week. But just on our similar rhythm, I think we're trying to do, and I apologize up to this point, the holidays got away from me. We've been doing essentially every 3 weeks. So that would put us out to February 13th, if that works for everyone. If so, mods.
I think that's town meeting, Sean.
You are correct. Wow. Okay. Let's aim for the 20th, then we'll go out a week after. Scott?
Do we need to when do we have to have a vote in on which parcel we like?
I'll check in with the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
I
that might be a reason to meet sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm open for meeting the 6th, and we can have another check-in, knowing that things are there. So that's why I kind of throwing it out there for commentary. I apologize. Glenn, Ms. Pavlicek.
The 20th is President's Day. You probably want the 6th. It's a holiday.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's February vacation. You might want to avoid that week.
Perfect.
So I agree, the 6th.
That's 6th it is. Tim, does the 6th not work for you?
I think the 6th is fine. I was just gonna say, before the holidays, we had briefly had a discussion about attempting to get these meetings back in person. And I don't know if that's still something that you're giving thought to. And if that's something that might come up in the upcoming meetings.
I would love to talk about that right now, because, I think in-person meetings are actually better. So, if people are open for the 6th, I'll kind of ask people. We got, actually, tonight's one of the nights we have everybody here. Would the 6th in person work for everyone? So, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of do a roll just to see, and if it does, I'm sure we can secure space, either a town hall or, the superintendent's room where we used to meet too. So I'll start with the checkerboard, Mr. Zulus.
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman.
And Sean, I gotta check some things, but it should be okay.
Here's a question mark then. All right, Selena.
Yeah, that would work for me.
Scott.
Well, unfortunately, the 6th doesn't work for me, but that doesn't mean that's either remote or in person.
Okay, perfect. Betty.
Yes.
All right, Aqua.
Yes.
Tim.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Carrie.
Yes.
All right, and I think that's it. Then just me. Okay. Glenn, you have your hand raised. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I'm on the 6th. I'm just looking at the schedule. If you need the superintendent's conference room, I think I can get it for you. Otherwise, town hall or wherever.
Okay. Yeah, let's run with the superintendent's room, just kind of for old time's sake. When we first started,
I
and
will
then
double-
if it doesn't,
I'll double check tomorrow with Charlene, but I don't see anything on the calendar for that night.
right, that works. Okay. Perfect. So the 6th in person. Perfect. And I'll entertain any motion to adjourn that anybody wants to yell out.
I move the motion to adjourn.
Second.
And Mike Carey. All right, roll call vote. Mike Zulus,
Yes.
Glenn Hoffman,
Yes.
Selena Miranda,
Yes.
Scott Tereshak,
Yes.
Betty White,
Yes.
Aqua Bond,
Yes.
Tim Lombard,
Yes.
and Carrie Hurley,
Yes.
and Sean O'Rourke. Yes. All right, perfect. Thank you all, and we'll see you on the 6th. Good night.
Thanks, Sean.
Great. Thanks, Sean.